I think by now you guys are probably figuring out that the left loves to blame the right for problems that they created. What's up, guys? John Claymore here, and this right here is a video that I've been wanting to work on for the past couple of days. I wanted to release it yesterday, but it did not get released. So I'm going to try to release it later on tonight, probably right around 5 p.m., maybe 6 if I'm kind of cutting it, if I'm being a little bit more moderate. But the thing is this right here. We got to talk about why it is that the left loves to blame the right for issues that they created. So this is going to be a relatively long video, but we're going to be going through a few things first. Number one, we're going to be going through the media reaction and media response. That's probably going to be a pretty good chunk of the video, so make sure you guys stick around. The second chunk of the video is obviously going to be countering a lot of these gun control narratives, calling the left out on their hypocrisy, especially this gentleman here who is very, very much in favor of gun control, but now has suddenly changed his tune when it comes to certain individuals of certain lifestyles. We're also going to be talking about the risk there, but we're also going to be talking about why it is that the left has this tendency to blame the right for their own issues. I'm even going to be giving you guys some other examples. Like I said before, it's going to be a relatively lengthy video, but make sure you guys stick around. Trust me, you will not leave here disappointed. So at this moment in time, Audrey Hale's, let's just say the little manifesto is kind of sort of being guarded, meaning that they don't want this information to come out. Well, normally when a shooting occurs, the first thing that the media likes to do is sensationalize the event. You even had Reuters, who, just to kind of contrast how the media normally does this, they refer to this individual as a Christian school student. Also, you had people online who were upset about the misgendering of this individual, which I thought was very, well, I would say it was weird, but then again, though, based upon what we've been seeing today, it really is not that weird given the fact that our media is mostly full of crap. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to start with the media response. Now, I want to go ahead and get this portion out of the way. You see, one of the reasons why this video was not released a couple of days ago was because there was this little tiny, let's just say pamphlet that was being thrown around on Twitter. I say pamphlet because it was obviously a digital pamphlet. I have obviously scraped out the date because people were getting banned over this. And of course, a lot of commentators kind of jumped on this saying, well, look, they're banning conservatives for sharing this. Okay, while I am not in favor of censorship, I do have to be fair. The truth is they were actually banning both sides. They were banning the trans activists from sharing it on Twitter, while at the same time they were also banning conservatives. I think Tucker Carlson touched on this, so we're going to go ahead and roll this clip because he kind of gives an indication of how the media coverage was, and it's kind of wrapped up in it, seeing how this is kind of the media portion, but I'll tell you exactly how it was that we found out that both sides were actually being banned for this. Let's go ahead and get this rolling.
Trans Day of Vengeance. Vengeance for what? That's not explained, but the suggestion is there will be violence in Washington this weekend. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted about this today, because if there's a day of vengeance coming, the rest of us should probably know about it. And for doing so, immediately had her official congressional Twitter account suspended. You're not supposed to talk about any of this, apparently. And the authorities in Nashville certainly are not planning to talk about it. They're doing their best not to. Here's the police chief of Nashville explaining that, well, he's happy to talk about the shooter's guns. He's not going to tell you anything about the shooter's motives. Watch.
So in the manifesto, there's several different writings about other locations. There were locations, there was talks about the school. There was a map of the school, a drawing of how potentially she would enter and the assaults that would take place. There's quite a bit of writing to it. I have not read the entire manifesto. Our team and the FBI has been working on this.
Well, that's interesting. Within what seemed like minutes, we saw pictures of the rifles and the pistol. We now have horrifying body cam footage from within the school. So unsettling, we're not going to show it to you. But somehow we can't see the manifesto in which the killer explains why she killed.
obviously the media is going out of their way to try to paint this individual in a very sympathetic light. Yeah, I don't have any sympathy for somebody who kills 3 kids and kills three elderly individuals. By the way, there's also going to be another portion of this video I didn't really think about, and like I said, I'm trying to keep my temper at bay here, because the original video I made, obviously, I was a little bit upset in that one. But here's the thing, though. If you are a teacher at this moment in time, you really and truly need to be considering the possibility of hardening the schools. I've seen people say stuff like, having a gun in the classroom is not a good idea. It takes away from teaching. And I kind of respond to that by simply saying, okay, number one, you don't have to carry one. You could always hire veterans. Don't worry, we will come back to this. Parents, I'm pretty sure, would at least take a shift, volunteer when it comes to protecting children. Jeffrey Prather did a piece on that, sadly, before this internet stuff got scrubbed. I have no idea why I can't find him on YouTube now. That's a problem that they have. And he made a lot of very interesting points on this, of which, by the way, I was in the mindset that only veterans should be able to go do this. But in reality, after thinking about it, I think to myself, you know, man, maybe parents of the kids at the schools themselves would be much, much better suited for this, because obviously with a child in there, there's obviously a much, much more deeper connection. Now, let me go ahead and make right now that if you are a teacher, you are charged with our kids. Now, they are not your kids, okay? They're not your kids. I want to go ahead and make that perfectly clear, because a lot of liberals think that they can go in there and pump our kids up full of information, very, very bad information, like, oh, you need to be more accepting, and they pump all this wokeness. Of course, there was this whole, started back in 2020. It was probably going on a lot longer before that, but 2021 was actually being exposed. Those teachers now find it very convenient that these kids are not their kids when it comes time to protect them. Very weird. Almost makes me think that there's some level of cowardice there. I just figure I would throw that out there. I'm not calling teachers cowards. I'm calling these particular ones who go on social media and say this type of stuff, I'm calling them cowardly. But let me go ahead and address the whole point of censorship on Twitter. Let's go ahead and kind of just kind of explain.
After reporting on Trans Day of Vengeance, they have this image here. It says, "Remove tweet violating our rules against violent speech. You may not share abusive content, harass someone, or encourage other people to do so." This is a post from the Post Millennial on Twitter that said radical trans activists and a DC Antifa group are organizing a Trans Day of Vengeance protest, and they've blurred the day and the location because Twitter is cracking down. Now, I saw initial reporting that Marjorie Taylor Greene had been suspended for calling it out. And the initial assumption was that people who were reporting on this and criticizing it were getting suspended. They were. But what Twitter claims to have been trying to do, I think I might have the tweet here. This is Ella Irwin responding to Ian Miles Chong saying, Ian Miles Chong tweets, "Twitter is now cracking down on those who promote the Trans Day of Vengeance poster, which mostly comprises of trans militants who are calling for a day of mass violence. Do not share the poster or you could be caught up in the bans to prevent mass violence from happening." Ella Irwin responds, "Correct. We had to automatically sweep our platform and remove more than 5,000 tweets and retweets of this poster. We do not support tweets that incite violence, irrespective of who posts them. Vengeance does not imply peaceful protest. Organizing to support a peaceful protest is okay." This is fascinating. This is absolutely fascinating because, for one, we're still seeing a problem of contextless censorship. You know, criticizing this is not the same as promoting it, but the automated censorship can't track that. But more importantly, when I went on Rogan's show all those years ago with Dorsey and Vigigate, I specifically highlighted leftist violence. Incitement to violence was being allowed on the platform. Meanwhile, people on the right were being banned. Now Twitter is actually cracking down and removing left-wing calls for extreme violence. I wonder if this is an inflection point.
Yeah, now, gang, as I have said before, I'm not in favor of any form of censorship. I think all pieces of information should come out. As a matter of fact, I operate on the assessment that not only should all pieces of information come out, but how do I put this? You need to be able to archive the intel so that way you can make better judgments in the future of who's giving fake news and who's getting accurate news. I personally now don't get my news from the mainstream media because I know that the mainstream media at the end of the day is really just pro wrestling. Don't worry, that's a project in the future that I've been kind of putting off. But the thing is this right here. Twitter actually banned both sides over that. They banned both sides. Okay, so you could say, okay, obviously they were wrong for this because the information was not coming out, but at the same time, though, you have to give Elon credit that he was fair here. However, Elon was not fair in this little ordeal here. Michael Knowles, and don't worry, we'll be bringing up Michael Knowles here in a second because this entire ordeal, in a lot of ways, kind of starts with him in his speech at CPAC. I'll go ahead and roll a bit of it now.
Middle way in dealing with transgenderism. It is all or nothing. If transgenderism is true, if men really can become women, then it's true for everybody of all ages. If transgenderism is false, as it is, if men really can't become women, as they cannot, then it's false for everybody too. And if it's false, then we should not indulge it, especially since that indulgence requires taking away the rights and customs of so many people. If it is false, then for the good of society, and especially for the good of the poor people who have fallen prey to this confusion, transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely. The whole preposterous ideology at every level.
Really quick on Knowles, a lot of this was due to the fact that you had the trans performing in front of children, of course, the drag shows. Tennessee straight up said, no, screw that mess now. We're not going to allow this crap near our children. And ever since then, this community has been upset about this, but let's go ahead and move forward. Michael Knowles, and this has got to do with the media section of this video for a reason. A lot of people, right-wing watch, MSNBC or MSDNC, whatever you want to call it, the Constipated News Network, CNN, or the Communist News Network, or you could use what Judge Joe Brown said about CNN, which I cannot say without getting banned here, but these people ran with the narrative that Michael Knowles said that we should ban transgenders altogether. That is not what Michael Knowles said. He basically said ban transgenderism. You guys heard him say that right then. If you want me to play it again, I probably won't for the purpose of this video, but I will be leaving the full speech in the description box for you guys. He was basically saying we need to ban the ideology, which, of course, the ideology is this rampant ideology that's being pushed upon our kids. As a matter of fact, a lot of it's being pushed through TikTok, and right now the Restrict Act, don't worry, we'll do a video on that tomorrow and talk about how dangerous that is, because it's basically Patriot Act 2.0 on steroids, but for the internet. We will do a video on that tomorrow to go along with the part one of the incoming crisis for men. Don't worry, we will be getting to that sometime tomorrow. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and make those projects this afternoon and tonight. The thing that you have to understand in this case is that the media is going to twist everything that you say. And Twitter, for whatever reason, chose to blame Michael Knowles for putting up a Bible verse. The Apostle Paul quoting the book of Deuteronomy, saying that the Lord is basically saying that, the paraphrase, the Bible verse, which by the way is up here. Basically what he is saying is that the Lord did not want people to take revenge, that vengeance would be his. One way or another, this entire thing would come back to hit the other people. And of course, all those old English proverbs or all those old Chinese proverbs keep coming out. Or my personal favorite one, the Klingon one, that revenge is a dish best served cold. And of course, there is the, if you go for revenge, make sure you dig two graves, because the proverb is basically saying that if you go to kill an individual for, and by the way, YouTube, I'm not advocating, I want to make sure you guys know that right away. I know this content's non-monetizable, then again, my channel's not monetized. The thing that you have to understand is this right here. If you seek vengeance, chances are you are probably going to, you're going to end up regretting it, because you're going to be going in the hole next to that individual. Now, with that right there being said, let's go back to Tucker Carlson just for a second, because he uncovered some very, very strange stuff when it came to NPR.
Joe Biden, for instance, makes this point regularly. Watch.
We're living in a country awash in weapons of war. I got it done once. I'm going to do it again. Eliminate assault weapon. It's time to ban these. It's time to ban these weapons. The right to bear arms is not an absolute right that dominates all others. You don't need an AR-15. I'm serious. Think about it. Ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines.
You don't need an RA-15 or whatever they call it. So that's the head of the Democratic Party speaking very clearly that the party's position on guns. If we don't control them, you can't have them. Every Democrat thinks this is part of the catechism. So you can imagine our surprise. The other day, we're driving through Cambridge in the old hybrid Subaru, adjusting our surgical masks to cover both nose and mouth, and listening, needless to say, to National Public Radio, the voice of menopausal liberalism. And as we're listening, we hear this. We're going to play it for you and see if you can understand our total shock.
Mass shootings targeting LGBTQ spaces and a rise in anti-trans rhetoric have inspired some queer people to take up arms. New Hampshire's Public Radio Todd Bookman joined a monthly gathering of a gun group that sees firearms as key to their own self-defense. And as you might imagine, this story does include the sound of gunfire.
On a recent Sunday morning, the parking lot of Pawtuckaway State Park in southeastern New Hampshire is filling up with hikers. There's also a different crew, packing up warm clothes and weapons.
Thank you all for coming to Rainbow Reload.
Your anti-trans rhetoric makes the trans community carry guns. Rainbow Reload! They're packing heat. They'll be appendix carrying in more ways than one. Watch out.
So National Public Radio is basically a, let's just say that they're kind of like the drummer at this moment in time, or one of the many drummers for the current Democrat Party establishment. And don't get, and you know, hey, look, you know, Republicans are at fault too because they're trying to cuck on gun issues. And don't worry, we'll be talking about gun control here in a second. Now, to kind of give you an example of the hilarity of the situation and exactly how touched these people are, I tend to think that the propagandists just aren't very bright. They or either A, they're not very bright, or B, they kind of underestimate their own audience. For example, when Joe Biden, our current leader, our current fearless leader, was questioned about this is kind of his, well, not questioned about this incident itself, even though he was talking about eating ice cream. But I think it was very, very telling because when the let's just say when reporters asked him about what Josh Hawley said, Josh Hawley basically said that he felt this entire thing should be labeled as a hate crime. I think that I'll be explaining that more on the other side, but this right here was Joe Biden's reaction.
I have no idea.
Josh Hawley believes they were. What do you say to that?
Well, I probably don't then. No, I have no idea.
Biden claims to be Catholic. He claims to believe in God. And yet your reaction over this is to laugh? This should kind of tell you exactly where our leadership really and truly lies. But the thing about NPR that I was trying to make, the point that I was trying to make earlier, which I didn't get to, and I wanted to make right here because I kind of record these things on the fly. I have the talking points scripted out as far as the points they go over, but I obviously goofed that little bit right there. The thing about NPR is this right here. So while you're in favor of gun control, you're also telling people of a certain lifestyle to buy guns. Very, very conflicting messaging. And don't worry, we'll get to that community here soon because obviously a lot of conflicting messaging is coming out from both sides. Fact of the matter is that it's pretty obvious that this little spiel on NPR just doesn't make any sense. Now, let me go ahead and say what I think may be the problem with Josh Hawley's language here. While it is definitely an act of hate, this individual, by the way, did not use an AR-15. Even though AR-15 was found on the person, they used a Kel-Tec 2000. We'll talk about that here in a second when we get to the gun control portion of this video. The thing that really kind of baffles me is that this was really an act of domestic terrorism. I think that terrorism should be a better label for this because if you start using the left's language, next thing you know, you're going down a rabbit hole of the language never being, how do I say, let's just say that the language will always be politically correct if you guys are kind of picking up on my drift. Now to the whole gun control thing. Joe Biden has been trying to get gun control as in like full-on disarmament. I did a video a long time ago on why it is that disarmament is completely impossible regardless of how many laws they put in place. I put that on the Short Timer Prepping channel. That old video is still up. I do plan on making a reassess project with the information that we have today at a later date, probably real soon in the future as a project here on Claymore, seeing how I've not been as active on Short Timer Prepping, which is, of course, is my backup and more military-driven channel. I will be coming back to that channel soon, so I will be leaving a link in the description box for you guys to go check out, or I'll put it in the comment section. But the thing you have to understand about the gun control argument is that after a while, it just gets completely mind-numbing an argument. I mean, look, here's the thing. Armed individual goes in, pistol, Kel-Tec 2000, which, by the way, is a 9mm. I'm not going to go through the whole caliber thing. Just know that a 30-06 is much, much larger than a 5.56, which was an AR-15 carries as a 5.56. 9mm is a much, much smaller caliber round. These kids were killed with a smaller caliber round. the Kel-Tec 2000 automatically gets called an assault weapon because obviously people on the left don't even know what the hell a... Look, man, these people still call it clips. They say crap like, I can show you all the videos about how the left will always say stuff like, this rifle fires 30,000 rounds a minute from a 5,000 clip. It's just stupid shit. These people don't know what the hell they're doing. But then again, though, a lot of the leftist politicians, they do know what they're doing because, quite frankly, they know that their voters are dumb. Kind of like this one here.
I don't have a tank. Right. I can't go and buy a tank. Right. I can't buy a
flamethrower. Can you buy that? Can you buy?
I can't buy any of those. None of the AR-15s have no use in normal daily life.
None.
No, none. And again, I don't say give up all your guns. I don't know why you have to have 11 of them, but maybe you do. But I want to know that you've got them because I want to be sure that I'm aware of what's going on in my periphery. And if you're not willing to do that, then we all have a problem. Telling people to put armed guards in schools doesn't work. Talk about Uvalde if you're not sure how that went down. Talk about...
I really find it funny that Whoopi Goldberg is named Whoopi. Whoopi, by the way, is a term of jubilation, a term of happiness, a lot like joy is a term of happiness, okay? It's a term of jubilation. But yet these two people are so very, very angry. Look, I did a video on a short time of prepping a while back talking about Geraldo Rivera, and don't even get me started on him, but we will be bringing him back up in this video because we've got to talk about that community here soon. How it was that he is so anti-AR-15. Well, let me say something to you right now, okay? The reason why the Second Amendment exists is obviously to protect us from government tyranny. However, government tyranny would not exist unless dumbasses like this here, being Whoopi, Geraldo, and Joy Behar, and don't worry, we'll talk about Hanoi Jane here too in a second. It would not exist if these people here did not exist. Basically, I think the Second Amendment, now the more and more I look at it, was protection from idiots, if you guys kind of know what I'm saying. Fact of the matter is, the gun control argument never works. I mean, Pew Research did a study, I think a few years ago, stating that the vast majority of deaths in this country that were gun-related were done by pistols. And it was like roughly 2/3 of those, don't worry, I'll leave the study in the description box, but 2/3 of those were suicides. Yes, that term will be coming up soon because obviously we can't say that word here on the internet. But then again, though, at the same time, though, that's why I need you guys to hit the like button so that way the video will go viral. In spite of the censorship, we have to use a different term because of how YouTube operates now. So don't worry, that will be the only time that we use it in this video. Yes, it's kind of stupid. It sucks. But the thing is this right here. A lot of these mass shootings are done with pistols, okay? So why are you not saying anything about that? Oh, we got to go after the AR-15. Well, why do we have to go to AR-15? Well, our military carries AR-15s. They carry M16s, M16A4s at this moment in time. They figure that the weapon's a counter against the troops. I personally want that weapon to counter me against government tyranny. We can go through why the Second Amendment is important. I'll leave the old video that I did. Just know that it will probably be reassessed at a later date as well. So that way you guys can see why it is that the Second Amendment is in place. So let's not do this whole gun control bit because at this moment in time, a lot of people got red-pilled on this issue. It was actually the plague, the China plague, is actually what red-pilled people a lot. That's one of the reasons why gun sales went through the roof. Even if you try to ban guns or try to come up with some form of gun control legislation, guess what? People are just going to buy them like crazy because they can obviously see that the government is becoming more and more tyrannical. Now, why would that government be tyrannical? Well, because of idiots like this here.
I'm saying it. I don't like guns. I would ban assault weapons in a second. We can go on and on about the gun control that we need in this country. And I always tell people, don't get guns. It'll make you less safe. I'm going to make an exception here for trans people. They are actually in danger. They have had hundreds of laws passed against them. They have right-wing media ginning up fear against them 24/7. They are targeted more than any other group in America. And if anyone should get guns, it should be trans Americans, okay? Because I'm worried for them. I'm worried that the right-wing lunatics are going to attack them as they have over and over again. And by the way, it's not just right-wing lunatics. Other people attack trans folks as well.
Let me go ahead and say this about Cenk. It does not surprise me that Cenk's position changed for this community. And of course, we're going to go ahead and segue into discussion about that community. It does not surprise me that he would say this because this is who Cenk is. But then again, though, this is also the same person that thinks it's okay to.
That if I were the benevolent dictator of the world, I would legalize bestiality where you are giving, where you are pleasuring the animal. You see what I'm saying? Okay. Okay. What?
And to answer one more thing to Cenk, when he said that it's mostly right-wingers, what's not all right-wingers is then what he said, he's kind of admitting that it's really everybody's getting tired of this. Guys, really quick, there was a poll released by the Daily Mail recently where people were asking how they feel about this certain community. And yes, people are beginning to get fed up with it. I think mostly when they see that you have people like William Thomas basically invading women's sports. I think people are beginning to get tired of it. So while I don't think that people are wanting to actually physically hurt anybody from that community, I am definitely thinking to myself that you guys are creating an issue that does not help that community out. Don't worry. I'll talk more about that at the very end of the video. This is also the same guy who, by the way, is Turkish, a Turkish atheist who denies that the Armenian genocide even occurred. This is also the same exact individual that had an actual, honest-to-God meltdown, I think it was at DFW Airport, over the fact that the plane that he was about to board had mechanical failures, and he wanted to board a plane that had mechanical failures, meaning that it could possibly crash. Yes, these people, I think just about every one of them are... let's just say I think that they may have a propensity towards the, I'll just say S-D to kind of avoid that little word that I was talking about. The fact of the matter is that these people are absolutely insane, okay? And we have, it knows absolutely no bounds. So them actually blaming the right for what's going on here does not surprise me because they hate Christians in general. It's almost as if to say they had this very, very bad self-guilt complex where they have to spread it around the rest of the world. It's almost like misery loves company. We'll be doing projects like this. But you got to ask yourself a question. Where does this hateful rhetoric, where do these people come from? Why is it they're so militant? Why is it the case? And then we get another example from our favorite ladies at The View, this time in the form of Hannah.
I think the women will rise up.
That's the activist.
That's Jane
speaking, and she probably will get a Nobel Prize.
But it's the truth.
Very soon.
It is the truth. We're not going to do it.
Besides marching and protesting, what else do you suggest?
Well,
it doesn't happen overnight. It's not a miraculous. What did you say?
Murder.
She's kidding. Wait a second. She's just kidding.
Don't say that. That's
you don't know. They'll pick up on that and just run with it.
The worst.
She's just kidding.
Well, let me talk to you about.
Now, Hannah Jane could have literally been joking. However, the problem is this right here. These people are mentally ill. Okay, the audience that you're going towards is mentally ill. They may view it as you being serious. Even with you doing that nice little facial expression where you got all serious. I saw Tim Pool talking about this and he believes she was serious. I personally have more experience with this treasonous woman. Don't get me started on her in Vietnam and the North Vietnamese. There's a reason why we call her Hannah Jane. I thought it kind of weird, especially given the fact that Hannah Jane did actually get saved and become a Christian, I think right around 2000. It was sometime after she divorced Ted Turner. So it's very, very weird to see that she still has this amount of discontent in her or the ability to actually joke about this. I don't take her serious anymore because, quite frankly, she's just not a serious person. But the thing is this right here, to that crowd of people, they're going to take what you say very serious because they are mentally ill and they, quite frankly, can't take a joke. Have you ever wondered why it is they demand language change and they demand so much political correctness? It's because these people can't take a joke. Which leads us to this little bit here. Now, I have to use the S-D. When I mean S-D, I mean self-delete. This is a community that has an extremely high self-deletion rate, okay? I'm not saying this to pick on or make fun of. I have said on multiple occasions that what needs to happen is that we need to be going out of our way to help these people out. We need to stop everything because roughly 80% kind of grow out of it when they get a little bit older. So there's no reason of putting somebody through a transitional phase or putting them on hormones. Now, guys, I've heard a lot of people use the hormone blocker or the testosterone argument that maybe this individual was on testosterone. Now, really quick, this may be the case, and I understand that it more than likely is the case that this person was on that. However, that does not mean, and I know somebody's going to come in here and say, oh my God, you're going to say that roid rage does not exist. Hear me out for a second really quick before you say that, okay? I personally don't see a use in using them. They, for the most part, up your blood lipid, your overall cholesterol, so that way you can get a little bit stronger. But the strength factor doesn't really last that long. I know people are going to say, no, it does a lot. Yeah, it does. It's called temporary measures. This is another reason why I'm kind of wondering why it is that you're giving these people with gender dysphoria who want to transition to becoming a man, why are you giving them this stuff? Well, the thing is this right here. We had an incident that occurred back in 2007. May have been 2006. I'm not entirely sure. But I mentioned Geraldo Rivera earlier, and I told you that I would pick this back up. Geraldo Rivera, of course, has been working for Fox for a very long time. Well, that incident that occurred was in Fayette County, Georgia. I'm pretty sure some of you may know what this is. I'm talking about the death of Chris and Nancy Benoit. The first thing that the mainstream media jumped to in that case was the fact that Chris Benoit, they believe, was on roid rage. However, there has been a lot more indications through investigations since then that have indicated that Chris killed his wife and his son, but Chris may have done this over signs and symptoms due to, and there were also other things in the house. I'm not going to speculate fully, but one of the main things that kind of canceled out the steroid argument was the fact that it may have been the signs and symptoms of CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Now, you cannot diagnose that until after you die. It's common in football players, common in boxers, common in athletes, especially those who take a lot of head trauma. This is one of the reasons why I think you might want to back up on the hormone argument just for the time being. And I'll go ahead and explain why now. One of the first things that the media did, especially Fox News, especially Geraldo Rivera, was they went on Sean Hannity and they went on Bill O'Reilly. At that time it was Hannity and Combs. Now, they went on these shows and they tried to establish a connection that Chris Benoit or Nancy Benoit, they had the same doctor, same pharmacist as another wrestler who had died recently at that time. That performer was Sherry Martel, the formerly, we used to call her Scary Sherry, Sensational Sherry. If you're a wrestling fan from that time frame, you will probably know who I'm talking about. Well, she had died a few weeks prior, or maybe it was a few weeks. It was roughly right around the same time. I'm not entirely fully sure there. But the media, for the most part, tried to establish a connection. Next thing you know, you've got Sean Hannity. He's interviewing Kevin Nash, formerly Big Daddy Cool Diesel. He's interviewing Jim Hellwig, the Ultimate Warrior. He's interviewing all these performers who were saying that more than likely it was probably something else that may have actually caused this or may have ignited it. So I'm just saying that while hormone therapy or while receiving hormones and testosterone may have had an effect here on this person's mindset, it's not exactly good enough just yet. You need to let all the facts come out through, I guess, toxicology reports and autopsies before we find out for sure if that actually had an effect. So let's not jump the gun here. However, that being said, this community still carries a very high self-deletion rate. That is before transition and after transition. Not a lot of evidence has been stated, but you have to wonder why the rate is so high. Now, guys, I'm going to play for you guys a good 4-minute clip right here from Steven Crowder because he had a very good explanation here. However, there is something that does need to be addressed afterwards. And of course, it kind of goes back to the whole gun control bit because, yes, we're starting to get into some extremely murky waters. I'm going to roll this and I'll come back on the other
your
side.
Children, as a matter of policy, is the absolute irrefutable truth. They are, in fact, coming for your children. And by they, I mean the activist, godless progressives, particularly in this country, but certainly now in the Western world. And you'll hear people say, well, all trans people just want to live their lives. They don't care about your kids. That's not incorrect. That is incorrect. Now, as we move on here, 2 key facts that you need to keep in mind. There's a lot of conjecture out there. There are a lot of opinions, okay? Every single one of these mass shooters was stopped by a gun. Whether it was their own gun, whether it was a police officer's gun, or by proxy, right? They were at gunpoint and they had to surrender. And the vast majority of these shootings take place in gun-free zones. Those are the through lines that everyone will have to agree upon, regardless of the subsequent solutions. Now, this will happen, right? You have one group that's talking about guns, and then you're going to hear the chorus of mental illness. The same people who demand common ground. Okay, mental illness. Can we even find common ground on that? Again, common ground. People like to act as though common ground in and of itself is loving. Not necessarily, and certainly not common ground based on a lie. Mental illness. Can we find common ground on that? And are both sides to blame? The left wants to push right now red flag laws. So do many on the right, by the way. I do not believe in them. But if I did, someone who publicly professes to be a part of a demographic, the transgender community, that puts them firmly in the camp of a 42% attempted suicide rate. If we're talking about mental illness, if we're talking about mental health, I would say that certainly qualifies. People will often shout, white men, and to be clear, this is an outlier. I understand that because the transgender community, the LGBTQ AIP community, are a statistical outlier. That's not lost on me. But often, of course, when these events happen, right, people looking for a through line or lying about a through line, they'll shout white men. White men, as a statistic, do not have a 42% attempted suicide rate. You'll have people say it's a lack of education is what it is. The uneducated do not have a 42% attempted suicide rate. Poverty. The real problem with crime is poverty. The poor do not have an attempted rate of suicide at 42%. But let's even go to mental health specifically. Depression. People with depression, they don't have a 42% attempted suicide rate. American slaves did not commit suicide or attempt suicide at 19 times the rate of the general population. Jews in concentration camps did not attempt suicide at 19 times that of the general population. Now, I know, this is not a suicide. That's not what I'm talking about. This is just a suicide incident. I get it. What I'm trying to address here is as everyone echoes, right, the chant of mental health, this would be a legitimate marker. A legitimate mental health marker would be a statistical anomaly that occurs nowhere else in nature at a suicide rate of 19 times the general population. I'm not talking about political points. I'm not talking about agenda items. Is there any more severe of a marker, of a metric, for an extremely unstable mental state than a consistent, nearly half attempted suicide rate for that population? We do not have the mental health crisis in this country that people tell you we have. That's why we can't find common ground. Now, we do have a mental health crisis in this country. We locked people in their homes for months, for years in some cases. And here's something else, too. We've not only destroyed the economy, and I know you'll have economists come out and try and argue.
Now, everything he said there, for the most part, I do agree. However, there is one thing that needs to be addressed right now. I do not believe that he was advocating for any form of red flag laws or anything. I think he was just simply highlighting something. Now, I have told you guys before, I, at one point in time back in 2019, thought about possibility of to a certain extent. And then it took me, I would say, probably like a day or two after thinking about it. And I thought to myself, this has got to be the most dangerous law ever written. Okay. It does not matter because not only are you suddenly pegging one community or another community, what if it turns into, I don't know, maybe instead of guns, maybe it turns into this person's not allowed to have a baseball bat. This person's not allowed to have a knife. Next thing you know, you've got a security check at every single product that you may potentially buy. This is not a good idea. Anytime somebody brings up the red flag laws, it automatically triggers in the back of my mind, and most people's minds, exactly how dangerous this is. Also, something else too, if you're labeling one community a certain way, okay, next thing you know, you're labeling another community. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. Next thing you know, the government has full, absolute control over you. I just figured I would go ahead and throw that out there right now. But I don't think he was advocating. As a matter of fact, he even kind of said that, no, I'm still not in favor of it. But still at the same time, though, it's kind of a dangerous road. However, there is one more thing that needs to be said. With all of this hateful rhetoric, with all this hate-fueled rhetoric against Christians or whatnot, that CW phrase continues to come up. Now, before we get there, I'm kind of going back to what the Timcast IRL special had the other night with Kimberly Guilfoyle, because they made some very, very good points. And I got to say something really quick to all those people who don't like Ian Crossland. He did make an extremely good point here. So make sure you guys watch this full exchange. I'm also going to leave the other part of the clip from Kimberly Guilfoyle where she talks about hardening the schools. I'm going to go ahead and let this entire thing run through, and I'll catch you guys
with this mass murder by Audrey Hale, like just to remember, just to leave the ideology out of it, if you can. It's not about transgenderism. It's about an adult that's drugged up, most likely drugged up, and just made to be crazy by her parents or by her community or whatever.
Mental health issues and perhaps exacerbated by our environment or hormones or whatever. We don't know, but we'd like to actually find out the facts.
Yes, and don't blame transgender people for this stupid woman's behavior. Like, she's a psycho murderer. That's a person. That's just put that on Audrey. She did that.
Nor should this be leading to any legislation to take away gun rights, in my opinion, because that's going to be a trap people are going to fall into.
And there were some reports that people are verifying now as to whether or not there were additional guns that were procured. But let me tell you something, like, if you get a gun, you get it legally. Okay, there are background checks. There is that. The answer isn't to say, oh, we're going to suspend, rifles or guns, etc. It's like the people who pick them up are the ones that are making these choices, that are doing this to engage in that behavior. How about actually caring more about protecting soft targets and children in schools, because this keeps happening, because it is a vulnerable asset for someone seeking to do harm and take life. They're not doing it other places where they actually have armed security and guards. I mean, look at every single instance of this. So when the people say to me, oh, well, this is the problem because the person had guns and they went in there and blah, 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 blah. And don't you love children enough to actually stop and ban these? I love children enough to have retired military veterans, etc., retired law enforcement come in that would like another job after they retire, go in there to protect children, bring in canine dogs, etc., and harden the target. Then it makes it less desirable. I know this. I was on the shooting team, officer-involved shooting team, and anytime an officer had to discharge a weapon and someone was killed at the scene, etc., I had to come in and investigate and clear the shooting. So I've seen it. I've been there. I've run all the courses myself personally with weapons, a simulator for school shootings, for everything, for preparedness for officers to go in. Okay.
Ian is right. You shouldn't be blaming an entire community for the actions of one individual. I just figure I would throw that out there. Number one, this person right here acted alone. We are also finding out that this individual had other targets in mind posted, so it may not have been an attempt at self-deletion. What it may have just been was an attempt at just spewing pure hatred and pure hell on the entire world that this person was around. It was a revenge act, obviously, in their mind. The text messages, as I discussed in part 2 of this entire little series I have going on, was, well, how do I say this? They were pretty bad. They kind of indicated the fact that this person was looking for fame and their obvious death. You'll hear about me later on in the night. I mean, the text messages were pretty horrifying in my opinion. It basically told you this individual was suffering from some sort of ordeal. Not to mention, it's also coming out, this person also suffered from more than that. But Kimberly Guilfoyle was 100% correct. You need to have people hardening the schools. It's really and truly the only way. You could red flag law anybody you want, but guess what? If an individual really and truly wants to do some form of harm, they'll use a knife or they'll go get a gun the illegal way. It's one of the reasons why I think that any type of attempts at gun control is just flat out stupid. It's counterproductive. It doesn't do anything. The only thing it's going to do is just make people go out of their way to buy more illegal guns. And the next thing you know, you're prosecuting them. And next thing you know, the prisons are full and people are being let out. And next thing you know, you create a great big giant problem, a great big giant mess. I haven't really talked about this aspect of the gun control argument, but still at the same time, though, you're just making a problem much, much worse than it already is. The best thing you can do in this case is simply harden the freaking schools. Which brings me to my final point, and I need to make this abundantly clear. I have been saying for a while that the left has this propensity to blame the right for issues that, quite frankly, they created. You created this issue. You told everybody to go out there and basically identify as whatever, okay? Your rhetoric has made them very hateful, okay? I keep going back to what that little proverb at the beginning, that if you seek revenge, you will be digging 2 holes. The reason why is because, once again, you see a person with a gun getting put down by a good guy with a gun, okay? You have to have that gun to counter. I mean, do I walk up to the bear who's trying to steal stuff out of my house and give him roses? Do I do that? Do I walk up to the person who is trying to carjack me? Do I walk up to that individual and say, oh, I love you so very, very much, and put my arms around your neck and give him a great big giant kiss? Do I do that? No, you have to be able to counter these threats. I'm sorry, it's just the way that the world works. And a lot of these people, especially those on the left, don't seem to realize that this is the way the world actually works. They've never paid bills. They're mostly suburban kids. They're pumping the message, and they've got an online platform, which really and truly kind of bothers me that they do, because they say hateful crap all the time, but yet it's always the right that gets punished for it, to a point where conservatives are kind of used to this sort of thing happening, especially with the direction that YouTube's going to be going in the next couple of years. I've got to somewhat self-censor myself. Part of the reason why I'm considering still putting pure political takes on Rumble and switching this content to mostly projects. Don't worry, there'll be another video explaining what's actually going on in the future, because I feel like I have to keep doing it over and over again because YouTube won't promote the channel. So obviously if they don't promote the channel, which by the way is kind of my own fault in a way, my subscribers need to know exactly what's going on. But the fact of the matter is this right here. This right here does not surprise you. Let me give you another example of what I mean about the left and Democrats blaming conservatives for their own problems. Let's take the current financial situation that's going on. When the banks began to crash the other day, what did the Biden administration do? They blamed the Trump administration because the Trump administration removed some regulations from Dodd-Frank. However, a lot of Democrats voted in favor of that bill, and the media, quite frankly, was on board with it as well. Dude, you had 2 years to reinstall those frickin' you had 2 years to reinstall those regulations. Why did you not do that? You obviously wanted this crisis. You wanted this crisis so that way you could come in there, swoop in there, and fix it and tell people, hey, look, man, I fixed the problem. You fixed a problem that you freaking created. What about East Palestine? What did they do? They blamed the lobbying effort back in 2018. Bro, you've been in office for over 2 years. You could have fixed this problem from the start. Fact of the matter is that people know that these people are completely disingenuous. So, no, nobody is buying this left-wing attack on the right or this left-wing blame on the right. Guys, John Claymore here. If you like the content, hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign up in the comment section. I'm going to get you guys' thoughts, and I'll see you guys later.